We all have thoughts every day that feel incredibly real. I'm not good enough. She doesn't like me. I always mess things up. And because they sound so familiar, because they come from us, we assume they must be true. But here's the thing most people never realize. Just because you have a thought doesn't mean it's a fact. Your mind is constantly generating noise, some of it useful, some of it destructive. That voice in your head can become a harsh critic, a fearful predictor, or a relentless warrior. And if you never question it, if you never challenge it, you start building your life around its lies. For example, think about the last time you didn't get a reply from someone you cared about. Immediately your brain might have said, "They're ignoring me," or "I must have said something wrong." That's not a fact. That's a story your brain made up to make sense of uncertainty. But because your emotions respond to that story, it feels true. And when something feels true, we often treat it like it is. This is where your power comes in. You can observe your thoughts instead of becoming them. You can say, "Okay, that thought just popped in. I don't have to accept it as truth." That's awareness. That's the beginning of freedom. It's the difference between being a prisoner of your mind and being its master. If you walked into a courtroom and someone stood up and made a wild accusation with no evidence, the judge wouldn't just accept it. They'd ask for proof. You have to be the judge in your own mind. You have to say, "Where's the evidence for that thought? Is that always true? Or is this just how I feel in the moment?" Most of the time, you'll realize these negative thoughts are built on fear, insecurity, or past wounds, not reality. Let's be even more specific. The thought "I always get rejected" might come from 3 painful experiences. But if you actually stepped back and examined your life, you'd probably find many moments where people accepted you, appreciated you, loved you. You just didn't give those moments the same weight. Here's the deeper truth. The brain tends to scan for danger and negative patterns because that's how it evolved to keep us safe. But you're not being chased by lions anymore. You're trying to build a meaningful life. And to do that, you have to rewire how you respond to your own mind. Thoughts are just that, thoughts. They're like clouds passing through the sky. They only have the power you give them. So when a negative thought comes up, pause and say, "Interesting, but I'm not buying it today." That one small moment of doubt in your doubt, that's the beginning of taking your power back. Nothing can truly change in your life until you become aware of what's actually happening beneath the surface. Most of us walk around reacting to life, reacting to people, emotions, setbacks, or triggers, without ever taking a step back and asking, "Why did I just respond that way?" We feel anxious, but we don't question the source. We get jealous, but we don't slow down to ask what that jealousy is trying to teach us. We tell ourselves stories all day long, yet rarely stop to examine them. That's why awareness is the first step. You can't change what you can't see. If you're constantly thinking, "I'm not enough," and you don't even recognize that thought as a pattern, then that belief is silently shaping how you show up in the world. It's affecting what risks you take, who you date, how you perform, and even what you think you deserve. But the moment you notice that thought, like truly pause and go, "Wow, I've been carrying this story around for years," you create distance between you and the thought. And that distance is where transformation lives. Awareness doesn't mean judgment. It doesn't mean saying, "Oh, I'm so negative," or "Why do I always do this?" That's not helpful. That's just adding another layer of shame. Real awareness is curious, not critical. It says, "That's interesting. I wonder where that belief came from." It's gently turning on the lights in a room you've always kept dim. And when the light's on, you can clean up what doesn't belong there anymore. So many of our self-sabotaging thoughts run on autopilot. They're like background music you've gotten used to. You forget it's even playing. But once you become aware of that mental noise, you can turn down the volume or change the station entirely. That's where the real power comes in. Sometimes awareness hurts. It can feel uncomfortable to realize, "Wow, I've been choosing relationships that don't value me." Or "I've been avoiding success because I'm scared of outgrowing people I love." But even that pain is useful, because the moment you see a pattern, you give yourself the opportunity to break it. Let's be clear, change never begins with the external. Not with a new job, not with a new relationship, not even with reading 10 more self-help books. Change begins the moment you become brutally honest with yourself. When you stop pretending not to notice your inner world and instead meet it head-on with compassion and curiosity. Awareness is the pause between trigger and reaction. It's that half second where you ask, is this the old me talking or the future me I'm becoming? And if you choose to listen to that wiser voice even once, you start to reclaim control. Because here's the secret. You don't need to fix everything today. You just need to notice. And once you begin noticing, you've already started the most important journey of all, the journey back to yourself. One of the biggest lies your mind will ever tell you is that every thought you have is yours, that every belief, every insecurity, every judgment came from some inner truth. But that's not reality. The truth is, many of the negative thoughts you carry around every day were never yours to begin with. They were given to you, passed down, imprinted on you from the outside world, long before you ever had the chance to choose. You might be walking around with a voice in your head that says, you're not good enough, but pause for a moment and ask, where did that voice come from? Is that really you? Or is that your critical parent? That one teacher who embarrassed you in front of the class? That ex who made you feel small? Society's standards that told you your body, your background, or your voice didn't measure up. Most of us are running on mental programs we never signed up for. They were downloaded into us in childhood, through trauma, through comparison, through moments when we were too young or too scared to question what we were being told. Over time, we internalize those messages, and now we mistake them for our own voice. But when you slow down, you can start to tell the difference. You can begin to notice which thoughts sound like truth, and which ones sound like someone else's fear. You might hear a voice that says, you'll never succeed at this. And if you really listen, you might recognize it's not you at all. It's the fear of someone who gave up on their dreams long ago. The mind is like a sponge in our early years. We absorb without judgment. We adopt without filter. But adulthood, real maturity, is about auditing what you've absorbed and asking, does this belief serve me? Does this belong to me? Or is this someone else's limitation that I've accidentally inherited? Imagine walking into a room and someone hands you a backpack filled with bricks. You've been carrying it for years and you forgot it wasn't yours. That's what it's like living with negative thoughts that don't originate from your core truth. And if you don't question them, they weigh down every area of your life, your confidence, your relationships, your growth. The goal isn't to never have negative thoughts. The goal is to interrogate them, to say whose voice is that? And if you don't like the answer, you have every right to reject it. You get to choose your belief. You get to rewrite the narrative. You get to return the thoughts that were never yours and replace them with ones that empower you, that reflect who you actually are, not who someone else decided you were allowed to be. Because freedom isn't found in changing every thought. It's found in knowing which ones don't belong in your mind anymore. And the moment you start doing that, you begin living your life, not someone else's version of it. Your brain is brilliant at many things, but its favorite thing to do is repeat. It loves patterns. It thrives on routines, mental, emotional, and behavioral. Not because they're good for you, but because they're familiar. And the brain's number one job is not to make you happy, it's to keep you safe. Familiarity to the brain equals safety. Even if what's familiar is self-doubt, anxiety, or constant criticism. That's why you find yourself having the same negative thoughts over and over. I'm going to mess this up. They're probably mad at me. I'm not enough. These aren't fresh thoughts. They're loops. Rehearsed mental scripts your brain keeps playing because it's used to them. The more often you think them, the stronger the neural pathway becomes. Like carving a groove in a record that keeps playing the same tune. Most of the time, people try to fix this by simply trying to be more positive. But trying to force positive thinking without addressing the pattern underneath is like painting over rust. It might look okay for a moment, but the damage is still there. The key isn't to force your brain to be positive, it's to retrain it to build new patterns. Think about it like this. The first time you had the thought, I'm not good enough, it probably came from pain, maybe rejection, failure, or comparison. But that one thought didn't stay a one-time event. You fed it, maybe unconsciously, but still, you replayed it, believed it, emotionally reacted to it, and the brain said, this must be important, and filed it as a shortcut. Now, when something goes wrong, your brain pulls out that same thought like a reflex. This is how emotional habits are formed. And the good news is, the brain that built that pattern can unbuild it. But you have to give it something new to work with. You don't eliminate an old pattern by fighting it. You create a stronger one in its place. So when your mind jumps to that old narrative, I always get it wrong. You interrupt it. You say, no, I'm learning. I've made progress. I've shown up. That new thought may not feel natural at first. That's normal. But if you repeat it enough, if you rehearse confidence the way you used to rehearse doubt, you build a new groove. And over time, that new groove becomes the default. Consistency is everything. Just like going to the gym, changing your thought patterns takes repetition. You can't do it once and expect a transformation, but show up for it every day, even for 5 minutes, and your brain starts to catch on. It starts to prefer the new path, and when that happens, you'll notice something profound. The thought you used to believe without question now feels like a stranger. Because it is. It always was. It was just a pattern. And patterns, no matter how deep, can always be reprogrammed when you're willing to practice the truth. It might sound strange at first, but many of the negative thoughts you hold on to, those inner voices that say, you can't do this or you'll never be enough, are there because at some level they're serving a purpose. They may be painful, yes, but they offer a kind of safety, control, or emotional payoff that your brain has come to depend on. Let's break this down. The thought, I'll never succeed, seems like pure self-sabotage. But dig deeper and you'll see that it actually protects you. If you believe you'll never succeed, you don't have to take risks. You don't have to face rejection. You don't have to deal with the fear of being seen and judged. Negative thought becomes a shield. It keeps you in the comfort zone, away from danger. Or consider the belief, people always leave me. On the surface, it sounds like heartbreak. But on a subconscious level, that belief might be protecting you from fully opening up to others. If you believe people will leave, you never have to be vulnerable. You never have to get too close. And if they do leave, it doesn't hurt as much, because you already saw it coming. This is what I mean by payoff. It doesn't mean the thought is good or right. It means it's doing something for you. It's offering emotional protection, even if that protection is outdated, unnecessary, or ultimately destructive. But here's the cost. Every time you rely on a negative thought to feel safe, you limit yourself. You rob yourself of growth, of connection, of opportunity. That inner voice might help you avoid temporary discomfort, but it also blocks you from long-term fulfillment. The hard truth is this. The brain would rather feel certainty than happiness. It will choose a painful belief that's familiar over a joyful one that feels risky. That's why people cling to limiting thoughts. They feel known, and the unknown feels terrifying. So, how do you move forward? You start by getting honest. Ask yourself, what is this thought protecting me from? What am I avoiding by believing this? What payoff am I getting? And is it really worth what it's costing me? That level of self-awareness opens the door to change. You begin to realize, I don't need to believe I'm unlovable just to protect myself from rejection. I can handle being vulnerable. I can risk showing up. The moment you see the payoff, you reclaim the power to choose differently. You can thank the negative thought for trying to keep you safe, and then let it go, knowing you no longer need it. Because true growth comes when you stop settling for emotional survival and start building a life that reflects your truth, your strength, and your capacity for joy. And you can't do that if you're still clinging to beliefs that were only ever trying to keep you small. The most damaging voice in your life is rarely the one coming from outside. It's the one in your own head, the voice that critiques, doubts, mocks, and minimizes you. The inner critic doesn't shout all the time, but it speaks with authority. It knows exactly what to say to shrink your confidence, trigger your insecurities, and convince you to stop trying. And unless you interrupt it in real time, that voice will keep running the show. The truth is, you can't silence your inner critic by waiting for it to go away. It doesn't go away on its own. You have to catch it mid-sentence, mid-thought. In that exact moment, it tries to sabotage you. Because it's in those moments when you hear, you're not good enough, or this is going to fail, or why even try? But you have the greatest opportunity to take your power back. Let's say you're about to speak up in a meeting, or approach someone you're interested in, or post something vulnerable online. That's when the inner critic shows up almost like clockwork. What if you sound stupid, it says. People will laugh. You're not ready. And in that moment, if you don't interrupt the thought, it will stop you. You'll stay quiet. You'll scroll instead of posting. You'll walk away instead of showing up. So how do you interrupt it? First, name it. Literally say in your mind, there's my inner critic again. That simple act of noticing creates distance. It reminds you that the voice is not you. It's a habit, a pattern, a conditioned reflex. You can observe it without obeying it. Second, challenge it. Ask yourself, is this absolutely true? Is this thought helping me or hurting me right now? Most of the time, your inner critic has no real evidence. It speaks with certainty, but it's built on fear, not fact. Then replace it. Don't just silence the critic, speak back. Offer a better thought. If the critic says, "You'll embarrass yourself," you respond with maybe, "But I've grown every time I've shown up. I'll grow again." Make your inner voice your ally, not your enemy. It might feel awkward at first. That's okay. Rewriting your internal dialogue isn't about being fake positive. It's about being intentionally supportive. Because if you wait until you feel confident before you push back, you never will. Courage comes first. Confidence is what grows after you've shown yourself that you're capable of thinking differently. And here's the beautiful thing. Every time you interrupt the critic and act anyway, you build new evidence. You create a new pattern. The voice that used to stop you becomes quieter. And over time, your inner dialogue starts to sound more like encouragement than criticism. So the next time that voice shows up, because it will, don't freeze. Don't collapse into it. Stand up in your own mind and say, "No, not today." Because every time you interrupt the critic, you make room for your truest, strongest self to speak instead. Your mind is incredibly imaginative, but more often than not, it uses that imagination to scare you instead of support you. It plays worst-case scenarios on loop. What if I fail? What if I'm rejected? What if they laugh? What if I lose everything? That what if spiral can feel endless and paralyzing. But here's the truth. What if I fail is not a question. It's a fear disguised as curiosity. And fear, when left unchallenged, becomes your compass, leading you away from everything you truly want. But what if we flip the script? What if every time your brain said, "What if I mess this up?" you responded with, "But what if I saw?" What if every time it whispered, "What if I'm not enough?" you countered with, "But what if I surprise even myself?" That one change doesn't erase fear, but it evens the playing field. It reminds your mind that possibility isn't just about danger, it's about potential. Because for every negative outcome your brain can imagine, there's an equally real and powerful positive one. We just don't rehearse those as often. We don't spend time imagining what life would look like if it went right. If we nailed the interview, if the relationship worked, if our courage actually paid off. You see, what if I fail creates emotional paralysis. It makes you hesitate, shrink, procrastinate. You stop taking action because you're waiting for certainty, and that certainty never comes. But what if I fly? That question creates emotional momentum. It activates courage. It gets your mind thinking in terms of opportunity instead of disaster. And that shift, however small, has the power to change everything. Let's be honest, failure is possible, but so is success. So is growth. So is meeting the right person, or finding your voice, or creating a life you didn't think you were allowed to have. And if you're going to live with fear either way, why not fear missing out on your greatness? Instead of fearing the discomfort of trying. The what-if game is inevitable. Your brain will play it whether you want it to or not. So the goal isn't to stop asking what if, but to steer it. To make it a tool for hope instead of hesitation. Ask better questions. Questions like, what if I'm stronger than I think? What if I'm exactly who someone is looking for? What if I'm already more capable than I've been giving myself credit for? Here's what's powerful. Once you open the door to those kinds of questions, you begin living in alignment with the life you could have, not the one fear is trying to limit you to. You start making decisions from your potential, not your past. So the next time fear says, what if I fall? You say back, but darling, what if I fly? Because you just might. And you'll never know until you try. Your emotions are real. They're valid. But they are not permanent. They move like weather, passing through, shifting with time, triggered by moments, hormones, or even a poor night's sleep. And yet, how often do we make lasting decisions from a place of temporary emotion? You feel rejected, so you lash out and burn a bridge. You feel insecure, so you cancel the interview you've been preparing for. You feel unworthy, so you go back to someone who doesn't value you. All of these decisions are made in the height of an emotion that won't even be there tomorrow. But the consequences, they last. That's the danger of reacting impulsively to feelings instead of responding wisely to facts. When you feel anxious, your world shrinks. When you feel hurt, your thoughts spiral. That's not a flaw, it's human. In those moments, you have to remember something powerful. The storm inside you is passing. Don't build a house in it. Don't carve your identity or your future around something that will shift by morning. Emotions should inform you, not define you. They're signals, messengers. Anger might tell you a boundary has been crossed. Sadness might tell you something matters deeply. Fear might signal you're about to grow. But those feelings aren't meant to drive the car. You are. And when you let your emotions make permanent decisions, you hand over the wheel to something unstable. Think about the times you've said something you didn't mean out of frustration, or the opportunities you walked away from because you were scared in the moment. Later, when the emotions faded, you realized what you lost, but the decision had already been made. So what do you do instead? You pause. You create space between feeling and action. That space, that moment where you choose not to react immediately, is where your power lives. It's where wisdom shows up. It's where emotional maturity grows. You say to yourself, I'm allowed to feel this fully, but I'm not going to act on it until I've calmed down, reflected, and come back to clarity. One of the most transformative habits you can build is learning to sit with your feelings without obeying them. Allow sadness, fear, anger to pass through you without letting them sabotage your future. And yes, it's hard, but every time you do it, you become more grounded. You stop letting every emotional wave knock you over. You begin to lead your life from choice, not just reaction. Your emotions deserve attention, but your decisions deserve clarity. And clarity often comes after the emotion, not during it. So next time you feel overwhelmed, remind yourself, I don't have to decide from this place. I can wait, I can breathe. This feeling will pass. The life I'm building, that needs to be chosen from strength, not survival. That's how you create a life that's true, not just reactive. That's how you start living with intention, not regret. We often talk about mindset as if it exists in a vacuum, something we can shape with willpower alone. Mindset doesn't just come from within. It's deeply influenced by what you allow in, the thoughts you repeat, the voices you listen to, the content you consume. These things slowly shape your worldview. And if you're not intentional about what you're feeding your mind, you'll absorb negativity by default. Think about it. If you scroll through content all day that glorifies drama, fuels comparison, or reinforces the idea that you're not enough, what do you expect your inner world to look like? Peaceful? Confident? Of course not. What we take in becomes what we reflect. It's not just entertainment, it's mental conditioning. If every day you're listening to people who tear others down, or you're constantly exposed to highlight reels of people's lives that make you question your own worth, you're slowly training your brain to believe that something is missing in you, that you're behind. You're not doing life the right way. And that constant drip of dissatisfaction becomes the background noise of your mind. Without even realizing it, you start to think, I'm not enough, but it works the other way too. When you start intentionally feeding your brain empowering ideas, books that challenge you to grow, podcasts that speak to your goals, content that reminds you of your worth, you begin to notice a shift. You start to speak differently to yourself. You start to expect more from life, not because the world changed, but because your inputs did. Your inner dialogue is a reflection of your external environment. If you're constantly around negativity, whether it's in your relationships, your social feed, or the news you binge, then negativity will become your default lens. That's why curating your inputs is one of the most powerful acts of self-respect. It's you saying, I care about what I allow into my mental space. I care about what I rehearse mentally every single day. Start small. Follow people who uplift instead of provoke. Read content that expands you instead of numbing you. Listen to voices that challenge you to grow rather than tell you to settle. These changes don't just improve your mindset, they rewire your belief system. Because over time, you begin to believe what you hear the most. And if what you hear the most is empowering, encouraging, growth-oriented, then that becomes your new baseline. You stop defaulting to fear and start expecting possibility. It's not about living in a bubble. It's about protecting your mental diet. Just like your body responds to what you eat, your mind responds to what you feed it. If you wouldn't eat junk food all day and expect to feel energized, don't consume mental junk all day and expect to feel confident and clear. Guard your mind like it matters, because it does. What you consume becomes what you believe, and what you believe becomes who you are. One of the biggest reasons negative thoughts stick around is because we're harsh with ourselves. We treat ourselves with a level of criticism and judgment that we would never dream of giving to a friend. When that voice inside your head starts to spiral, calling you out for your mistakes, your flaws, your perceived shortcomings, it's usually because somewhere along the way you forgot how to be kind to yourself. Self-compassion is not just a fluffy feel-good idea. It's a powerful tool for rewiring your mindset and breaking the cycle of negativity. When you practice self-compassion, you're actively choosing to treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer someone you love. You recognize that being human means being imperfect, and that mistakes don't define your worth. Negativity thrives in an environment of self-judgment. The more you beat yourself up, the louder that inner critic gets. It's a vicious loop. But when you step in with compassion, you create a space where healing and growth can actually happen. Practicing self-compassion means acknowledging your pain without exaggeration or minimization. It means saying to yourself, this is hard right now, and it's okay to struggle. Instead of shutting down or pushing away uncomfortable feelings, you allow yourself to experience them with gentleness. This doesn't mean you let negativity control you. It means you hold your feelings with care while choosing not to be controlled by them. Self-compassion also helps you build resilience. When you stumble or fall short, instead of spiraling into shame or frustration, you say, I'm doing my best and that's enough. This shift in mindset reduces anxiety and self-doubt, making it easier to take risks and try again. It's like giving yourself permission to be a work in progress rather than demanding perfection. One practical way to practice self-compassion is to speak to yourself as you would to a dear friend. If a friend messes up or feels down, you don't tell them they're worthless or stupid. You encourage them, remind them of their strengths, and reassure them that mistakes are part of growth. Do the same for yourself. When you catch yourself in negative self-talk, pause and reframe it with kindness. Another key aspect is mindfulness, being present with your emotions without judgment. When you notice a negative thought creeping in, observe it like a passing cloud rather than a permanent fixture. Remind yourself that thoughts are not facts and that you deserve love and respect, especially from yourself. Over time, practicing self-compassion rewires your brain. The more you show kindness to yourself, the less room there is for negativity to take root. You begin to build an internal environment where confidence, peace, and joy can flourish. Remember, you're not fighting negativity by trying to be perfect or harsh with yourself. You're fighting it by becoming your own biggest supporter, by treating yourself with the love and compassion you deserve. That's the real key to lasting change. Removing negative thoughts is not about pretending they don't exist or forcing yourself into constant positivity. It's about becoming aware of those thoughts, interrupting the patterns, and consciously choosing a different path. One rooted in self-awareness, kindness, and courage. It's about recognizing that your mind is a powerful tool. And like any tool, it needs to be trained, fed, and directed with intention. So when you start catching your inner critic in the moment, challenging those what-if fears with what-if-I-fly possibilities, and creating space between your emotions and your decisions, you reclaim your power. When you curate the inputs you allow in and practice radical self-compassion, you build a mental environment where negativity has no foothold. Remember, your thoughts shape your reality. By choosing to remove negativity and replace it with empowered, constructive thinking, you don't just change your mindset, you change your life. That transformation starts with one simple but powerful choice: to show up for yourself every day, with patience, love, and unwavering belief in your potential. So right now, make that choice. Interrupt the doubt, replace the fear. Be kind to yourself. And step boldly into the life you deserve. The life where your greatest possibilities are waiting for you to claim them. Because when you do, Negativity doesn't stand a chance. You become unstoppable.